The United Kingdom and France have signed a declaration of intent on deploying troops in Ukraine if a peace deal is made with Russia. Ukraine Prime Minister Keir Starmer, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced this after talks with Ukraine's allies in Paris. According to Prime Minister Starmer, UK and France will establish military hubs across Ukraine to deter future invasion, while French President Emmanuel Macron says thousands of troops may be deployed. Allies have also largely agreed robust security guarantees for Ukraine, proposing that the US will take the lead in monitoring a truce. But the key issue of territory is still being discussed. Russia has repeatedly warned that any foreign troops in Ukraine would be a legitimate target. Moscow has not yet commented on the announcement made in the French capital. Joining me now from Belfast, Ireland, is journalist Francis Hughes. He joins me virtually. Good to have you join us.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Hello, everyone.
All right, so let me just get your thoughts on the proposed security guarantees for Ukraine, a statement being released by EU leaders. I mean, what do you make of it, and what do you think that the mandate for these troops in Ukraine might be?
Well, firstly, I don't think it's going to succeed. I mean, we're back where we were with the Minsk agreements. If you remember, Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 were guarantors for peace between the Donbass, eastern Ukraine, and the fascist regime in Kiev. Francois Hollande and Angela Merkel both went guarantors for the peace process. They then ultimately confessed in public that what they were actually doing was buying time for the Ukrainian armed forces to rearm and then to reoccupy the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine. So these European leaders have already proved their deception in the past, and there is no guarantee that what we're witnessing and what is being proposed is nothing more than NATO troops in western Ukraine. These security hubs could be nothing more than NATO military bases. I think we're watching the slow defeat of the Ukrainian armed forces by the special military Russian operation. I think this is an attempt to save the remnants of the Ukrainian army, and it is the Minsk agreements Mark II, where they will simply rebuild the armed forces, rearm them, and fully support them with NATO troops on the ground in western Ukraine. That is something that the Russian president and government have stated on many occasions is unacceptable. NATO promised not to move 1 inch east after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, but all they have done is encroach and try to surround the Russian Federation. And I don't believe that Russia will accept NATO troops, because in the future, if there's a peace deal and these NATO troops are allowed on the ground in western Ukraine, if there is like a false flag attack, then that will instigate Article 5 of the NATO treaty and bring NATO into direct confrontation with Russia, which they are already doing in the background, but not publicly as yet.
So what then would a security guarantee for Ukraine look like? Because Ukraine is not, I mean, NATO membership is totally out of the question. Ukraine says it fears future invasion. And then you said that, I mean, this might not also look acceptable to, to Russia. What then should a security guarantee look like?
Well, you have two opposing camps. You have NATO and the US. You have people in Britain and France and Germany and Poland who are professing that there will be a future war against Russia. You have the Germans trying to voluntarily seduce their young people into the army. France is the same. Britain's the same. We've had a British general talk to the British public, telling them that they should be prepared for sacrifices, prepared for war. And indeed, there seems to be a plan potentially in 2029 to have an all-out war with the Russian Federation. Europe is now like the 1930s. It is an armed camp. We are moving further and further to the right. We are seeing fascists being elected into power across Europe. So Russia has said from the very beginning that they will not allow NATO troops in Ukraine. In fact, they want to denazify the fascist regime currently in position in Kiev. So from the Russian point of view, they will take whatever land they see is necessary up to and possibly including Odessa as far as the Dnieper River. And then I believe that they will halt their advances. That will leave Western Ukraine as a rump state supported by the EU. So NATO wants to put troops on the ground for potential future battle and war with Russia. Russia will refuse to allow NATO on the ground. So we have a stalemate, and I believe that the only way out of this is if the Ukrainian armed forces and Zelensky surrender the land that has already been taken in a special military operation, denazify the country, and refuse to have foreign troops on its soil. But those are two contradictory positions, and I don't know where there can be compromise from either side if both continue with their stated positions.
The issue of territory perhaps is one of the, in fact, the main sticking point. You know, in this peace deal, Russia wants the territory, Ukraine doesn't want to give it up. Do you see this particular issue of security guarantees now being proposed by EU leaders becoming another sticking point?
Yes, absolutely. Now, Trump and Kushner have talked about land for peace, for giving up the land that has already been taken in the special military operation in order to have a peace deal going forward, as the Americans seem more interested in the economic attempts to exploit the Western Ukraine for American and EU corporations. So if you have a deal where you have land for peace, I think it's only temporary. I genuinely believe that NATO and the EU plan a further assault on Russia in 2029, because that date has already been put out into the public domain. And Europe is rearming. We heard Trump several years ago, his first presidency, saying America would no longer carry NATO. And the amount of money being spent in the EU on armaments and on drones and on weapons of mass destruction is now in the 1.5 trillion euros or $1.5 trillion. This is the money being spent in Europe, not for defense, but for preparation for a future war against Russia. And, sadly, unless that changes in the West and changes in the EU, I think war is a very strong potential going forward.
And how do you think Russia views this latest proposal from EU?
Well, if you're Russian and you look back to the Minsk agreements and you see European leaders signing on to a peace deal, which they then turned around and said that was pure camouflage, they wanted time to rearm. This is, as I've said, the Minsk Agreement Mark II. If Russia signs on to this and that allows NATO troops to rebuild the Ukrainian armed forces with NATO troops, with British troops, with French troops, with Germans and Polish in the background. They're talking about up to 30 countries. I assume this is the remnants of the European Union nations. 30 nations possibly going forward in a conflict with Russia. So Russia won't accept NATO people on the ground. Trump and whoever else in the background who's trying to push this. Russia's a huge country. There are plans to balkanize Russia into 9 separate component parts. They want to balkanize Russia the way Sudan's been divided, the way Somalia is now being divided, the way Libya's been divided, the way Yemen's been divided, many countries. They balkanize them, they break them down, they make sure that they're no longer a threat, and there are long-term plans to turn the Russian Federation into 9 separate component units, which would be easier to manage so that Europe and American corporations can go in and steal the wealth belonging to the people of the Russian Federation for the aggrandizement of European corporations, millionaires and billionaires. So this is a long-term plan. Whether or not it comes to fruition, we have to wait and see. But that is what is in the background, and that is what is driving what we're seeing at this present moment in time.
And the concern from European leaders is not just about Ukraine. They're also worried about other countries because, as you well know, just recently, Russian jets were intercepted. Jets or drones, I'm trying to get it correctly, were intercepted, over airspace of some European countries. And that has become a concern for European leaders that Russia might be planning to invade other countries. And isn't that a genuine concern if they're looking to put boots on the ground in Ukraine?
Absolutely not. In my opinion, this is just propaganda being propagated by the West and the EU. Let's forget the Ukraine for 1 second and let's look at Venezuela. Let's look at what they said about Maduro, a democratically elected president of a country who has served more than one term in office, whose elections have been verified as fair and honest by people like Jimmy Carter and others. And yet Trump said he was a drug dealer, yet the drugs that come into America don't come from Venezuela. This man has been captured. This man has been kidnapped. This man has been illegally dragged to America and is being brought before the courts in a sham political trial in order for America to steal the resources of Venezuela, its oil, which they claim any oil tankers that will leave Venezuela will be seized. They will be taken to America and the Americans will enjoy the profits. So these are the people that are telling us about a potential threat from Russia, when they are the people who are involved in the murders in Gaza. They are the people involved in the murders of Lebanon. They are the people involved in the murders of Somalia and of Syria and Venezuela, and wherever they choose to go. You will have lies, you will have deceit, you will have talk about weapons of mass destruction. They're already saying that Iran could produce nuclear weapons that could hit Europe within minutes. This is just Iraq Mark II. I don't believe a word they say. I don't listen to them. I don't read their media. I don't listen to their radios. I don't watch their television news. For me, it's deceit, it's lies, it's propaganda, and I choose not to believe a word that they say.
All right, Mr. Hughes, we're going to take a break now. Interesting thoughts you have there. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation of, because you did raise the issue of the global world order. We'll look at that as well. Thank you, everyone. Stay with us.